Our thoughts are with our members and their families as they process this devastating news. We also make a note of our solidarity with the parents and students whose school communities have been disrupted and for whom the quality of their education has been decreased. But we are also outraged. We think that these latest layoffs are outrageous because there was a cynical attempt by this district to avoid telling the truth when they talked about how the effects of the budget crisis, which they've actually created, would be kept away from the classrooms. We now note that the layoff of 3,000 educational personnel, from teachers to teachers' aides to bus drivers, that's not keeping the effects of cuts away from the classroom at all. We also know there's a note of hypocrisy here. We have an administration, we have elected officials in the city who've displayed so much energy and passion and initiative to find funding for NATO, to find funding for DePaul basketball stadium, to find funding for bike lanes in the city, but won't lift a finger to address the revenue crisis that has affected the public schools. And so for the third year in a row, we see the prospect of declining funding for our schools, and the effects of that are these layoffs. We resist the urge on the part of the administration of the city to blame teachers and to blame our pensions for the crisis. Really blaming retired teachers who make an average of $40,000 a year for their retirement, who get no Social Security, who never missed a payment, while the city itself didn't put any money into the fund for 10 years, who have had a massive pension holiday for 3 years. We think that's hypocrisy. And we think that our members have paid again and again. They paid with layoffs in both 2010 and 2011. The school year, the school day for students got more than 20% longer, and yet now we see massive layoffs in the very staff that's supposed to be delivering the educational content that makes that school day better. I don't see the point of making school 20-some% longer and then laying off all the art, music, and physical education teachers that are supposed to fill that day up with education. So today what we're going to do is we're going to hear from a number of parents and educators and members of the community who are personally affected by this crisis. And I'd like to begin with Sean Diller, who's an orchestra teacher at Kelly High School. Sean?
Hello, my name is Sean Diller, Seandiller. I received a layoff notice just quite recently. What for me the biggest issue is, what does this look like for the kids in the classroom? My department lost another person as well itself. Because of that, in order to keep my program, the orchestra program that I was the only teacher of, we had to move around the department. It's quite possible that one of our teachers will have to handle 90 students at once in one classroom, a chorus classroom. And you can tell that's a rather large number of students. Music teachers love to have a lot of students, but one teacher only goes so far. I hurt for my kids because I have made friendships with them. I student taught there. I was hired because people thought that I could do well and build the program. That's what I worked on this year. That's what I built. I built relationships with my kids. I built relationships between all levels of the orchestras that I had. And I tried to develop and instill in them an identity that is orchestra. And it's really hard because this is my first year after being laid off. They're getting now a third teacher. For some of them, this is their third year is with a completely different person. And it disrupts the program, it disrupts the education of the students. And at Kelly High School we have 23 teachers who have been laid off total. And that's going to increase class sizes, reduce classroom items that we need, including textbooks, being able to copy things, etc. It's a big hole in our education at Kelly. So, thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Ruth Augsburger. She'll spell that for you. She's from Carson Elementary.
Good morning. My name is Ruth Augsburger, R-U-T-H-A-U-G-S-P as in Paul, U-R-G-E-R. I've been teaching for Chicago Public Schools for almost 10 years. Until this morning, I was the art teacher at Carson Elementary School on the city's south side. And just not even 2 hours ago, I got a call from my principal that my position was one of the ones that had been cut. I came to school in Chicago. I studied at one of the most excellent art schools in the country, which is in the city of Chicago, and I decided to stay here and teach for Chicago Public Schools because I believe that every child should have the privilege to have the highest level of education. So knowing that there were many challenges to teaching in this district, I have decided to stay here for almost a decade, and I'm currently part of a cohort nurturing teacher leadership, and we are public school teachers who are committed to professional development. We're here over the summer, and there are many of my colleagues in the room who've been meeting this week and next week who also don't have jobs, but they are still committed to coming and learning as much as they can to further the education of our students, even though the future of this district seems so uncertain, and our own individual futures seem very uncertain. And I just want to say to the people who are in leadership that you do not have to look outside of the city to find people who love our children. There are people who are working in our schools who have given their lives, they've given their careers, they have made sacrifices for their family. This is my summer, and my children, my 6-month-old is at home today while I am here working for our children, not just mine, but the children of our city. I walked the picket line pregnant with my own daughter, fighting for the rights of our children to have the education to which they are entitled. We do not need to go outside of the city. We do not need to give people contracts. We do not need to hire outside organizations to come in. It should be the concern of our city. It should be the concern of the people who know our students well and who love our students. And I hope that the people who have the power to make decisions will listen to that. I beg of you, please, for the sake of our students.
Next, we're going to hear from Joanna Maldonado, who's a 5th grade teacher at Bethune Elementary. Loser? Okay. Next, we're going to hear from Tammy Vincent, who was a teacher at Emmett Elementary, which is on the school's closing, CPS's closing list. Tammy?
Hi, my name is Tammy Benson, T-A-M-M-I-E, Benson, V as in Victor, I-N-S-O-N. All right. We were told originally, I teach at Emmett Elementary, a special ed teacher there. We were told when school ended that we'd be notified on the 15th whether or not we still had jobs. So today's the 19th. I've not been informed directly whether I have a job or not, but the press knew before the board had the courtesy to inform teachers whether or not they were still able to have a livelihood. I was wrong with all the other teachers I work with at Emmett. We didn't come to teaching for money, for any sort of personal gain. We came to education with the desire to work with students throughout the city, but now our profession is basically under siege. Things are happening where our school system's been taken over by people that have no invested interest in our schools. So we as community people, as parents, as teachers, are being marginalized to the point that we are having to come out and beg to keep our schools open. And I'm insulted by that. I'm so upset right now with the fact that they're destabilizing the whole Austin area, which is where Emmett is, where I have a home, where my property taxes are being used to fund something other than our schools. So I don't really know what we can do, but I do know that if people in power are making decisions that are directly impacting the people in the city without being really concerned about the fallout, then, it's time for us to do something different. I prefer to stay at my school, I prefer to stay in my community, but they're putting us in a position where we're gonna have to go and do and make decisions that we should not have to out of concern for just teaching students. So I don't know what's gonna happen, but hopefully this and other things that the mayor's been doing over the few years will get us to the point that we realize we have to do something to save our schools and save our communities. Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Jeff Blackwell, who is a special education teacher at Near North, a school that's also closing.
My name is Jeffrey Blackwell, Jeffrey, Blackwell, Blackwell. I'm a 16-year CPS veteran, special education teacher for the past 7 years. My school, Near North Special Education Center, services a diverse group of students with emotional disorders and disabilities, for students with special needs. Our school was closed. We were on the list. Also, another special education or therapeutic day facility, Buckingham, was closed. Both schools, the students were fused to Moses Montefiore, another therapeutic day school, which we already have few of, that service students with such severe special needs. Our school, like I said, was closed. Our staff has yet to be notified who is supposed to go over, if we even have positions. The teachers at Near North have worked as hard as any staff I've ever seen to service our students. Our students are bussed in from all over the city. Students with special needs need a continuum of services, and they need people to be there that care for them, and they need consistency. That's the biggest thing for students with special needs. With our school being closed, with other therapeutic schools being closed, these children will be in disarray. They're taking something from their lives, the structure that helps them, the relationships they built with the teachers, with the staff, and with a school that they feel is their home. Not only, like I said, not only with Near North, but with all special education centers and with all schools that are closing, period. These children are having their bedrock uplifted from them. It's a part of their essence. The neighborhood schools, therapeutic schools, is something that the students need. So again, our students, it baffles me as to why something like this would be done to students that have special needs. Where are they going to go? What's going to happen with them? The parents are being, it's a disservice to the parents, because you already have a student that requires extra attention and concern and care, and you have staff at these schools that provide this to these children, yet it's being uprooted from them. So the staff is out, principals out, the children are out. I talked to a couple of my students today, and they're still in disarray. They still can't believe that the school is closing. So my biggest question is, why would you do this to a population of students that needs additional attention? And why would you do this, period, when all of our schools have done, the staff have done as good a job as they could at any school to keep students off the streets and help students excel? So why? That's the biggest thing to me. Why? Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Tim Megan, who is a nationally board certified teacher and will speak today as a parent of elementary school student at Mitchell Elementary. Tim.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Timothy Megan, Timothy Meegan. Like Mr. Sharkey said, I'm a 9-year veteran and national board certified teacher at Roosevelt High School, where I teach social studies. In addition, I am a father of an 8-year-old at Mitchell Elementary School. At Mitchell Elementary School, we've lost $780,000. We were offered a $35,000 bribe, or as CPS terms them, grant money. We lost 3 teachers at Mitchell Elementary, a bilingual teacher, a librarian, a media specialist, and a longer day position. At Roosevelt High School, our budget has been cut by $1.1 million, which amounts to despite all the wrangling and the hard work that we have taken part in to ensure that as few of the budget cuts hit the classroom, we still have lost at least 10 teachers. Okay? We were offered at Roosevelt no extra funds. And this is despite the fact that our enrollment is increasing and our test scores are increasing. And I'm here to say that an elected school board would locate new sources of revenue in a crisis like this. There's TIF money that can be restored to our schools. CPS could renegotiate toxic rate swaps with the banks. We lose millions of dollars there. With TIF funds, we have $250 million every year that's being siphoned off our schools, and only $92 million of that goes back into our schools via capital improvements. In addition, an elected school board would fight for a financial transaction tax. Don't tell us that there's no money in this city to educate our children. This is criminal. But unfortunately, we have an appointed school board that's responsible only to the mayor. And the mayor is more interested in serving his own special interests and the folks that helped him get elected than the people of the city of Chicago. And so our school board is going to balance this budget on the backs of our children instead of being creative, like Mr. Sharkey said, and finding new sources of revenue. It's wrong. It's wrong. And I will fight you. We will all fight you to the last breath. Okay, I know. I'm fine. The schools have been hijacked by the mayor's special interests. All right? And it's really difficult for me in this situation to imagine that there's some kind of reasonable explanation for this. The only thing that I can think of is that they're deliberately sabotaging our neighborhood public schools in order to call them failures so they can privatize the system for the profit of a few. It's wrong. We won't have it. We won't have it. And that's what I have to say today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Next we're going from Anita Caballero Kelly, who's a member of the Brighton Park Neighborhood Council Board, who's the board president there, and the mother of 3 graduates from Kelly High School.
Good morning, my name is Anita Caballero, A-N-I-T-A, C-A-B-A-L-L-E-R-O. I am really upset and very emotional also about these budget cuts. Kelly High School has lost $4 million. Okay, Davis Elementary has lost $1 million. Burroughs Elementary has lost $500,000. Shields Elementary has lost $370,000. Shields Middle School had lost $200 million. I'm sorry. Bryan Park Elementary had lost $300,000. Columbia Explorers Academy had lost $500,000, and Gonzalez Academy had lost $1,000. This is an outrage for the Bryan Park community. Altogether, they had lost $7.5 million. But what I'm outraged about is Kelly High School. Kelly High School has been off probation since June. They have been off probation. They didn't deserve this cut at all. You know how much they have lost 23 teachers that they have mentioned. They have lost 23 teachers. Just imagine that. Kelly High School is the biggest high school in the Chicago area. And to lose 23 teachers, what's going to happen to those students? Do you know how much materials they are going to lose? And imagine it coming down to toilet paper? Toilet paper. What are they going to use if they don't have materials for toilet paper? Their hands? And I'm not making this as a joke. This is serious. Very serious. Very serious. We had a public meeting Wednesday evening. We invited the CEO, CPS, Ms. Bennett, and we also invited Mr. Vitale. to come out to our meeting. They refuse to meet with us. They refuse to meet with us. Why? Why did they refuse to meet with us? That is their job to come out and meet with us. Also me as a parent, and to answer our questions why they are doing these budget cuts. Why are they refusing? We have 500 parents come out to that meeting. Why are they refusing to meet with us? Why are they hiding? Why do they refuse to meet with us? And as far as the mayor, what kind of a job is he doing? Supposedly he says he cares about our children? Would he send his children to our schools? I don't think so. I bet you any money his kids had the best education they could get. What about our children? Don't they deserve what his children got? Don't they deserve it? Now they're putting up that stadium. Do they really need that stadium? He says, the mayor, CPS, everybody's telling us they care about our children. Then why are they doing these budget cuts? How did they decide what school loses how much money? Why can't they answer our questions? Why don't they come out and answer our questions? Me as a parent, I want to know. I want to know. Why are they hiding? Why won't they come out and meet with us? When has the mayor or Ms. Banner or Mr. Vitale ever come out to the south side and meet with our schools? Why don't they come out and see how our schools are running? Why don't they come out and meet with us? Could anybody out here answer that question for me? I guess not. I guess not. But we want answers. We need answers, and we want answers. Because our children want to succeed. Just like their children succeeded, we want our children to succeed. And we want money so our children can have the best education and to have our children succeed like they deserve to succeed. Thank you.
Next we're here for Victoria Benson, who's a parent from Portage Park, an LSC member at Portage Park Elementary.
To say the least, this is heartbreaking. It's Victoria Benson, Victoria, Benson, Benson. I'm the local school council chairperson at Portage Park Elementary. We suffered $800,000 budget cuts, but it feels more like $900,000 because they're taking 2/3 of our cell tower money, and in addition, making us pay for subs and supplies, which we never needed before. These cuts that they're taking away are taking away teachers support, resources, staff. It's, like I said, it is very devastating. And I'd like to know how they expect these kids to excel in larger class sizes. If your child has 1 ounce of a learning disability, how are they supposed to excel? My son has high functioning autism, and he's mainstream. How is he not going to be left behind? How are any of these kids not being left behind? They are failing us. They're failing our kids more than anything. And I think they need to realize that our kids are not a dollar sign, and they are somebody. And we need to start investing into their future. Thank you.
And finally, we're going to hear from Joe Persky, who's a Harvard-trained economist in the economics department at UIC. I have to sit that Harvard.
I'm here to tell you something you know. We are a rich city. We're not a poor city. We are a rich city. We've heard about all the projects that we do find funding for, things like NATO meetings, things like bicycles, real estate developers who seek out TIF funds. We find money for these things. Nevertheless, education, we are told, is a luxury we can no longer afford. And we're told that despite the fact we are a rich city. If you look at the Chicago region, The per capita GDP, that's what we produce. The value added we make when we go to work, for you people who are working, that is $60,000 per year, not per worker, for every man, woman, and child in the Chicago region. For a family of 4, that's $250,000. But we're told we're poor, we're told we don't have the resources to finance a reasonable education for our children. Are those funds impossible to find, or are people just unwilling to look for them? Here's a list of a few ideas that we could bring to bear. Some of them you've already heard about. One, TIF funds. TIF funds, half the TIF funds, half of $500 million, were meant for education. You want to ask yourself, what are those monies going for? Are they going for something that's more important to us than education? My guess is that the answer is no. That's a simple place to start looking. $250 million a year that we could bring to bear on this problem with financing our public schools. Right now, 60% of TIF monies are going into prosperous neighborhoods in Chicago. Chicago's not a poor city, but we're taking those TIF monies, taking them away from public schools, and we're putting them into prosperous neighborhoods. Second, so first TIFs, we could look at that a lot more carefully. Second, swaps. The Chicago public school system got caught up in this whole swap activity that brought down the economy in 2008. Right now, they are tied into a series of agreements costing them something like $40 million a year. We could go and look at those banks like the Bank of America, who it was on the front page of the paper today. Those banks right now have embarrassing profits. They're worried about regulation. Worried about regulation, they should be worried that we're going to come after and demand our money back. So why aren't we renegotiating those swap deals with the Bank of America and other banks that are doing extremely well? Third, and perhaps most importantly, we should start looking at some form of fair taxation for our city, our region, and our state. People from the suburbs are coming into the city and they are earning good money. Why don't we have a progressive income tax applied to commuters, say 0.5% to 1.5%? That could add $1 billion a year to the city's budget that could be brought to bear on our problems in the public schools. And it would be fair because people are earning their livings here and they're not paying anything to support the city that they're exploiting. At the same time, we could talk about financial transaction tax. People have been hearing about it. I think this has legs. With 25 cents on a trade, that's nothing. We're talking about a quarter. 25 cents on a trade to the buyer and the seller. Notice it's not on the exchange, it's on the people who are trading. The exchange will stay here, the exchange won't move. For 25 cents on each side of a deal, we could generate $1.4 billion every year to apply to the problems that we're facing, the highest priority problem that we're facing. This isn't something way down, fixing a pothole somewhere. We're talking about educating our children. If we wanted to do it, there is a way to do it. The question's not one of feasibility, the question is one of whether we have the will. Our city has not even tried yet. It's time to reverse this public decline, to reclaim the resources around us, and build a school system that can serve as a shining light for generations. Thanks.
We're going to hear from Tamika Somerville is going to come speak for some Action Now, a community group in the South and West Side.
And then we'll have questions. How you doing? Tanika Somerville, T-A-I-N-I-K-A, Somerville, S as in Sam, O-M-E-R, V as in Victor, I-L-L-E. Coming from, as they call it, Inglewood, where a lot of these schools have been closed and teachers have lost their jobs and lives have been devastated because you have hopefully a one-term elected mayor who does not care about what happened to our children, but cares everything about what happened to his child and their children. When I say there, I'm talking about the 1%. At this point, we all need to come together, stand up, fight back. One job lost, one child lost, it's all the same. Enough negativity. Chicago has had enough. We are tired. Stop taking away from our families. Stop taking away from our livelihood. No more jobs? What are they going to do? What are they going to do? How are they going to feed their kids? Public assistance is going to shortly be cut off. Then what? Unemployment, steady going up. Everybody paying the same amount of taxes, fair tax rate. Wondering why they say we're broke. Millions going into a deep hall. A private school that's already paying over $30,000 a year. Invest back into where the money comes from, our neighborhood. Schools. How can you take away art? How can you take away music? How can you take away these things that our children love? How can you elect a board that doesn't know anything about my kind? Anything. But instead, you tell me that a person in a green jacket is going to get them to school safe and get them home safely? Nobody pays my insurance bill, let alone my children. That don't go for me, that goes for us. Enough is enough. We are tired of losing jobs. They're moving them out of Chicago. They're everywhere but here. But we have tourists to come, spend money every season. But yet and still, teachers don't even know if they're going to have a job. Where's the decency? Where's the respect? Where is it? I'm telling you now, we are demanding an elected school board. We are demanding that DePaul give us our money. Don't accept it. We are demanding that these teachers do not lose their jobs. We are demanding that these kids stay where they want to stay. If they don't want to be there, they wouldn't have been there. So leave them alone. It's their comfort zone, not yours. How dare y'all tell us what we know and what we're going to do with our kids. No, we're fighting up. We're fighting back. We're standing up and we're fighting back. No more jobs lost. No more kids dying.
Go, girl.
Thank you. I'll take questions.
Jesse, what do you know about the teachers who are from the closing schools? I know one of the teachers mentioned she really hasn't been notified yet. How many of those teachers are there? Have they been notified or have they not been notified? These are the highest rated tenured teachers, 585. What is going on with them?
850 teachers and other school personnel received layoff notices soon after the schools were voted to be closed in late May. In addition to that, there were about 615 others, whether it was paraprofessionals, clerks, or teachers who are highly rated and tenured who did not receive a layoff notice. They're waiting for the district to tell them what's going on with transfers, whether or not they will follow their students, and they have still not received word. One of the things that's been very frustrating about the school closing process is how late in the school year it was pushed. The legislature once had a deadline in December in order to avoid this exact problem, but CPS went to Springfield and got that deadline changed. But as of now, late July, our educators that are eligible for transfer still do not know if they're going to be transferred or not. So it's quite possible that that will add to the layoff number when we finally hear who will be transferred and who won't.
Jesse, is there any concern that this might be retribution in any way for the 7-day strike? Or that this is, part of the fallout?
No, I think what this is the starving of public schools through with insufficient revenue. And I think that when the district first said that they were going to be closing 50 public schools in order to save money, I think that was about the right. I think that was about the right answer. I think that this is also because of a revenue shortfall. I think each of the last 3 years they spent less on schools than the year before. And in the context in which they're trying to do ever more, in which there's other kinds of inflation, not just in terms of how much benefits cost, but how much energy costs and all the other school, costs that are associated with running schools, what it means is that we're offering a more and more meager, a more and more poor public education product. And I think that's what's driving this process.
Did they tell you at the time of negotiations that they had the money to pay for the increase in salaries and benefits?
They agreed to that. And frankly, the increase in education, the increase in payment for teachers and other personnel is extremely small compared to all the other expenses this district is taking on. So for example, it's taking on a much longer day, and there's a whole set of staffing requirements that go along with that. This district is paying more than ever for charter schools. You know, they're on a building boom for charters, and that continues to go up. This district is spending a tremendous amount on network offices that have each network office has its own PR department attached to it, and you know, their face personnel. And they're spending plenty of money on that. There's a Department of Incubation and Innovation. There's a Department of Strategy Management. There's a Department of Accountability. These are. But ultimately, I would not say that the district is somehow hiding a giant pool of money somewhere. And I do think that they're making poor spending decisions. But I think really what this comes down to in the end is a lack of political will and political willingness to pursue revenue. And that's what our public schools really need.
Jesse, are you seeing these cuts at all the schools, or are they specifically more targeted toward the neighborhood schools like she spoke about, Kelly? Are they cutting Whitney Young and Northside College Prep?
I know that Whitney Young has seen cuts. In fact, their LSC rejected a budget for that reason. It had too many cuts in it. But we think that the cuts are hitting neighborhood schools the hardest. One of the things that's been extremely difficult about this process is the district has been, I think, cynically hidden behind a soundbite, in which they keep saying, well, we're keeping the cuts as far away from the classroom as possible. Great, but at the end of the day, there's still literally tens of millions of dollars of cuts that are going to hit the classroom. And even though they know what that picture looks like and have known that picture for some time, they've refused to actually come out and tell us what it is. And so now our members are getting hit with the layoffs, and they're getting layoff notices, but we have still not seen a comprehensive picture of where the layoffs are hitting across the city.
The school system says, you know, we know we have these financial difficulties. You address the pension payment a little bit, but they claim that they have no other options at this point.
Well, I think the school district has lots of options. You know, if the mayor took the same amount of energy and initiative to pursue revenue for the schools that he's taken to pursue revenue when it comes to an infrastructure trust, that he's taken when it comes to a river walk, bicycle program, you know, NATO conference, you could go through it, and put that political energy, there are a number of ways that they could pursue revenue, whether it's trying to unwind some bad financial deals that CPS has made. And I know this is a mayor that has a lot of connections to the financial industry, so I don't know where he could put attention there. You know, I think that for the last month and a half, instead of hiding behind a soundbite about how these cuts aren't going to hurt education, if they had come out and told the Springfield and told the legislature that we need some more revenue, who knows what's going to happen in May when they were in session. I mean, there are a number of common sense proposals that the union has about producing more revenue. And I think that's what's needed.
Jesse, what's in it for them to, as you say, to starve the school system and not pursue more revenue? I mean, what do you think their end game is here? Why would they want to starve the school system?
Well, I think there's an overall plan, Kate, to move a significant chunk of this school system into the charter sector. I think that they're talking about, their long-range planning has talked about 30% charter schools by 2020, and I think that's part of it. And beyond that, I mean, I think there's a real cynicism about public services, and looks like we're moving towards a city where there's low rates of taxation, especially on the wealthiest people. Property owners are being hit fairly hard, but you know there's very little sort of taxation among the people who are very wealthy. And we have a very minimal set of public services that go along to everyone else in the city. And I think that is not I don't think that's a healthy recipe for well-funded public schools.
Jesse, the district is blaming the $400 million pension payment for a lot of this, and they say that you all were in a room and trying to negotiate something and it didn't work. What, in your opinion, is the reason why you weren't able to come to a deal to maybe lower that pension payment?
We have been negotiating with the district, you know, in earnest since last year. But in the closing days of the session, closing week and a half of the session, we were pretty much continually in a room at the behest of the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House. And we had what we consider a workable proposal on pensions. What that required, though, was a commitment for funding and revenue on their part. You know, what we're not willing to do is simply see the people who are retired teachers, who are retired on an average pension, as I mentioned before, of $40,000 a year. We're not willing to slash that. The proposals now that are being talked about talk about slashing pensions, including the retirees, by a third. Okay? And you're talking about people who don't get Social Security, who never missed any payments. And if there's not a willingness on the part of the legislature or CPS, you know, which in fact has a tremendous amount of influence on the legislature because of who ultimately calls the shots, I'm talking about the mayor, to be clear, to say we're willing to actually try to seek some sources of revenue that are substantial that could actually fix the problem, then there's not much incentive for us to finish that negotiation. And so. That's where things ended at the end of session.
What's going to be the effect if the LCs continue to reject the budgets they're handling?
Well, I think that two things I'll say. I mean, it's going to mean more instability and difficulty in the schools. And I think that one of the real untold stories is how at the local school level people are scrambling to figure out how their school's going to work. You know, you've got students who are in schools for 7 hours. Teachers teach for 5 hours, which is necessary because teachers also have to eat lunch and have IEP meetings and make plans and do all the professional development that allows them to, you know, provide high quality instruction for those 5 hours. But it means that you've got schools that don't have a way to cover students for the other 2 hours. Literally, the layoffs have been so deep. The number of people they've had to get rid of has gone so far that I don't know how they're going to cover. And I think you've got principals out there who are literally at their wits' end trying to figure that out. And I think it's a real disservice to our schools to have left this process so late, to have murkied it up so much with misleading sound bites. And I really think that's going to be a real difficulty. The other thing I think is that it's going to produce, ultimately, it's going to produce some political fallout.
Jesse, what are you and your members actually going to be able to do? Because for all the talk of fighting against the closings, they still happen. I mean, what's the power that you hold at this point?
Well, look, ultimately, the power about the closings was a power that was vested in an handpicked and appointed school board. Ultimately, the person who called the shots on that was the mayor. And I will say that I think that we won the argument in public. I think that we won the battle of public opinion. At least that's what the polls show. That by the end of that process, by 20 points, the public disagreed with the program of school closings, and yet we couldn't soften the heart of Pharaoh, and those school closings still went through. And I think that ultimately what we have to do as educators is two things. Number one, I think we have to continue to advocate and be a political force in the city. We've talked about us registering voters. We have dozens of our members out canvassing in neighborhoods around the city right now, trying to do political education. There's mass meetings going on. For example, there'll be a protest at the Board of Education meeting next week, which the union is sponsoring, but a whole bunch of community organizations are sponsoring and building as well. And then ultimately, the other thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to survive, which is what teachers always do, and what parents always do, and members of the community always do. At the end of the day, someone's still got to stand up in front of classrooms across the city and figure out how to make it work. And we can be outraged, but we also have to be the people who have to deliver education in the community.
Two
So what are we
things.
finding out
Can
we
you-
don't be
can
able
you-
to
so
do
we can
for the
wrap
folks
this
who
up?
have lost their jobs?
The mayor just released a statement too, and he's also going back to pension reform and saying it's now in the classrooms. We've been told too, maybe you could just comment on this, that in that May meeting, you guys didn't offer any reform on pension. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, it's not true. I mean, we actually put forward quite a comprehensive plan. That we had actuaries that ran a set of numbers. We went as far as trying to figure out how a revenue piece would work. We tried to figure out how to deal with retiree health care. We had quite a bit of consideration about the question of constitutionality and whether this is a plan that would hold up. All those are sort of parts. The mayor wants to talk about benefit cuts, right? And we want to talk about securing revenue. And I understand this is a negotiation, and neither one of us is willing to sort of give a final number on that. But if we don't have some sort of a realistic sense that there's a willingness to address the fact that there's a revenue crisis, short piece of history on this. There used to be a dedicated revenue stream in Chicago for pensions. And that revenue stream was taken away in '95 in exchange for a promise that the pension fund would be kept funded. And for the 10 years after that happened, between '95 and '05, the city put in nothing, made none of its contributions. So in a very real sense, the current underfunding crisis is because a revenue stream got taken away in exchange for a promise, and that promise wasn't kept. And so now we want to go back and talk about solving the problem based on cuts to retirees and people who are about to retire. And to us, that doesn't seem fair. If we want to talk about a dedicated revenue stream, then we can talk about a way to make the whole thing work. So that the pension, because we want a solvent pension fund, but we refuse to shoulder. Look, we've been hit. In 2010, we were hit by mass layoffs. In 2011, we were hit by both mass layoffs and a freeze, right? Last year there was a strike in order to get a 20% longer day for a 3% increase in pay, right? And this year again, mass layoffs. So this is not a recent problem. Someone's got to deal with some of the structural issues here, and we say that goes back to funding public schools fairly.
Can you fight any of these layoffs, the ones that were announced last night, today, and typically when there are layoffs, a majority of the teachers are able to land in different places. Given the financial conditions that the schools are in now, do you expect many of those who've gotten layoff notices to be able to have a job sometime down the line?
We're not talking, when we talk about layoffs, we're not talking about turnover. Turnover is what happens ordinarily, which is that one person retires out of position, but the position is held open, and a new person comes in to fill it. We're talking about positions that are closing, that won't be filled again. We obviously will continue to fight that. I will say that, in closing, our heart really does go out to those members and their families who are struggling through this. Their world has been rocked, not just their livelihood, but their community, and their sense of mission and calling in life, and the way that people are separated from that. And yet at the same time, we want to preserve a sense of outrage and dignity over the situation that all of our schools have been put in. And you'll hear more from us. So thank you very much.
Did someone in Spanish?